Hi! Tomorrow, the Carnegie Medal Prize is announced, the winner of the Carnegie. So I thought today I will come and run you through the shortlist and let you know the one that I think might win. Bearing in mind that I haven't got it right yet, you probably don't even need to listen to this to know that yet again I've got it wrong, but who knows, I might have got it right. There are 7 on the shortlist, and I'll go through them briefly one by one. The first one is the Blue Book of Nebo by Manon Stephan Ross. Now, I read this one quite a while ago, and it's a dystopian almost. You've got Rowena and her son Dylan, who are living in an isolated cottage near Nebo in Wales. And everything takes place 7 years after the end. We never know what the end is. We go through the whole book and we do not know what the end is. But Rowena and Dylan seem to be the only people left. And when they do travel to Nebo, they go through empty houses to see what they can scavenge. And when they come across a blue notebook, Rowena suggests that each of them write down their thoughts and feelings in this book. And it becomes a place to write about secrets and tell truths. And particularly, mother and son have made this pact never to read each other's entries. Dylan was 8 when the end came. And his entries are about his life now. Whereas Rowena talks not only about her life now, but the life before the end. The entries show the relationship between mother and son and how they've learned to survive, and they've learned each other's strengths and weaknesses. I found myself fearing for their way of life by the end of this book. I found it a deeply profound book. So that was the first one on the list. I'm not redoing these in any particular order. The second one is I Must Betray You by RUTA SEPETYS. Now this one I thought was really powerful. It was well written, well researched. It's a historical novel, and it's not I'm not really one for historical novels, and I know little bits and pieces about this period, but evidently not enough. And you're looking at the lives of the Romanians through the eyes of Christian, and it is heartbreaking. It really is. The fear of never knowing who to trust is so tangible in this book. You have memos from the Securitate, which add another layer to the fear, because you know that everybody is being watched. There's nowhere that is safe. And you've got the brutality of this regime as well. And it's in first-person narrative, and Christian is persuaded to become an informer. And you understand the stress that his life suddenly becomes with this stress. It's set in December 1989, in the run-up to the capture and the execution of Ceausescu and his wife, when the revolution begins and the youth of the country, which is led by the youth of the country. The pace of the book increases as the state turns, and it's harrowing. The brutality, the bloodshed, the unimaginable fear that these people had to live in. I thought that was really powerful. The next one was Needle by Patrice Lawrence. It's a very short novel, and it's about a teenage black girl, Charlene, who is in the UK's foster system. Her mother died, and her beloved little sister is living with her dad, who refuses to allow Charlene any contact with her. Charlene's coping mechanism is to knit, and it's the repetitive action of knitting that calms her. Her latest project is to knit a dinosaur blanket for her little sister, but a couple of bad choices she makes causes her to be in contact with the police and the criminal system. And although you can see why she acts as she does, you don't agree with her choices. So that was a book all about the discrimination that children in foster care often have. The next one is The Eternal Return of Clara Hart by Louise Finch. This one, this kept me reading late at night. And it starts off, you think you're going to be reading a time loop story, but it is much more than that. There's tension, there's suspense. It deals with grief, with toxic masculinity, sexual violence, accountability. Spence is having a bad Friday, and it gets even worse when he goes to his friend Anthony's party, and Clara, a girl he's had a crush on for quite a while, ends up dead. When he wakes up the next day, he's back on this Friday. And so he thinks, oh, I've got a chance to save Clara. And she ends up dead again. And each day this is repeated. He is trying to save her. He's trying to learn what went wrong the time before and act on it. And it's fascinating to watch him change and see him learning from mistakes and changing his perspective. And it's a book about maybe telling you not to that following others is not always the way to go. It's an important novel for older teenagers, I think this one is. Then you've got Medusa by Jessie Burton, and this is the illustrated edition. And this, I love my Greek myth retellings, and I adored this one. It's almost written as a coming of age story, and we've got 18-year-old Medusa living with her Gorgon sisters. And although her sisters can have the power of flight and can disappear, she can't. And when this stranger, who turns out to be Perseus, lands on the island, she craves companionship, but she's fearful of how he will react to her appearance. And she's also wary of Athena's warning of woe betide any man fool enough to look upon you. At this point in time, she doesn't know what her power is. She doesn't really understand this yet. But it's them getting to know each other with a rock between them, so he can't see her, and it's their relationship. But both of them are keeping secrets. He's keeping secret his mission, and she's keeping secret her appearance. And it's a super retelling because it gives Medusa the chance to tell her own story and to finally accept who she is. It's a sensitive Medusa. And although we know the story of Medusa and Perseus, we feel such emotion for her. Well, I did, So that's that one. 2 more to go. The next one is When Shadows Fall by Sita Brahmachari. And this was an emotional read. It covers topics such as mental health, grief and death. And it's also a novel about growing up and the value of friendship. Kai's a year behind his friends because a tragedy stopped him taking his A-levels when they did. And at the beginning of the book, you don't know what this tragedy is. But he feels he needs to write down his story. He needs to write down what happened to him to give himself closure, to heal himself. But because he needs to know what happened from his friends' perspectives, he asks them for their input as well. So what you have is Kai's story in his words and in the words of his friends, Zach and Orla. And the story is raw and painful because even though you know that they're memories, it doesn't stop the story piercing you. And you've got ravens as well. They add another element to the story. And it's an intermingling of prose and verse with gorgeous black and white illustrations. And the final book in the shortlist is The Light in Everything by Katya Ballan. Katya won it last year. And this is told from the point of view of Tom and Severe. Sophia, yeah, 2 children in the final year of primary school who flung together. Tom lives with his mum, and he's a fearful little chap. He's frightened of everything. And Sophia lives with her dad. They come together because Sophia's dad and Tom's mum are having a relationship and having a baby. So these 2 children are thrown together. And Tom has to start a new school, so he's fearful, will people accept him? Sophia is full of anger at having to share her dad with Tom's mum and Tom. And and especially fear for with the baby as well, because if there's a new baby, will her dad still love her? It's all these fears and emotions and anger, and it's a lovely story looking at emotions and childhood anxieties. So those are the 7 books in the shortlist. For me, the strongest 2 are MEDUSA and I Must Betray You. But my gut is going to go for I Must Betray You by RUTA SEPETYS. I think that will win this year. I hope it wins this year. I wouldn't be disappointed if MEDUSA won it. In fact, I wouldn't mind. I don't mind. I enjoyed all the books, so I don't really mind which one wins. But my favourite, first place, I Must Betray You, and second, MEDUSA. So we'll see. So happy reading. I hope you enjoyed looking back at the Carnegie Medal shortlist. So happy reading. Take care.